From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro says the channels of communication with the opposition remain wide open, but he wants dialogue to take place without conditions. Maduro also says he will cling to the Bolivarian constitution to defeat the coup against his government. President Maduro made their remarks while talking to international media at the presidential palace in Caracas regarding the ongoing political crisis in the country.
Partial agreements that allow us to progress in peace and strengthen democracy, and for a global agreement of governance, peace, democracy, self-determination of the country within the framework of the Constitution. This is the framework for any national dialogue, and I am committed to national dialogue. Today, tomorrow, and always, I will be committed and ready to go wherever I have to go personally. If I have to go to meet to this boy wearing a cap, two caps, in the Humboldt Hotel at 3 a.m., I go. If I also have to wear a cap, I go. Or if I have to go naked, I also go. However I have to go, walking, in a motorcycle, in a car, I will go because I believe in democracy, in the word. I believe in truth. I'm a Democrat. I keep my word. And I talk of dialogue from my moral and political strength, from our democratic convictions, because we believe that only through dialogue and diplomacy can we attain solutions to the conflicts. And it's not violence, it's not interventionism, it's not a coup, the road. Never in the 21st century to settle disputes and conflicts. No. The road are not bullets. It's not missiles. It's not military threat or intervention. It's not a coup that they're trying against Venezuela. The road is dialogue, diplomacy, understanding, word, the search for solutions and negotiation. That is the road.
The High Commissioner for Human Rights has also called for dialogue as the way to solve the Venezuelan crisis. A spokesperson for the office says Commissioner Michelle Bachelet has expressed its, quote, concern over the situation.
The High Commissioner is extremely concerned, and I quote, that the situation in Venezuela may rapidly spiral out of control with catastrophic consequences. She says it's vital the authorities refrain from closing any remaining avenue of dialogue by prosecuting political and social leaders, including members of the National Assembly.
And Russia has offered to mediate between the government and the opposition in Venezuela if necessary. The comments come a day after Moscow stood by Nicolás Maduro as Venezuela's legitimate president. Russia says it will cooperate with all political forces that have acted responsibly. But despite the calls for dialogue made by President Maduro and different international bodies, the opposition leader Juan Guaido has rejected any attempts to talk and has called for more national demonstrations. Guaido proclaimed himself as interim president on Wednesday, which only the U.S. and its Latin American allies have recognized.
It must be very clear for the world and this regime, nobody is attending a fake dialogue.
Meanwhile, some U.S. diplomats were seen leaving their embassy in Caracas. This video shows a convoy of vehicles accompanied by a police escort driving onto a Caracas highway towards the airport. All this comes after the U.S. Senate, the U.S. State Department ordered non-essential diplomatic staff to leave the country. But Washington is still refusing to close its embassy in Caracas, despite Maduro's calls for them to do so. President Maduro has thanked world leaders, social movements, and activists for their help to the Bolivarian government.
In the United States, there's a wave rising to reject the coup that is pretended to in Venezuela. The coup of the government of Donald Trump against the legitimate government of President Maduro and the Bolivarian Revolution and the Venezuelan democracy. An awareness is rising, and I talk to that consciousness, the noble democratic consciousness of millions of men and women around the world who know that Venezuela has democracy, that once again a coup is attempted against Venezuela, monitored, financed, conducted by the government of the United States.
Support for Venezuela has poured in from all over the world. On Thursday, CARICOM heads of government reaffirmed the bloc's guiding principles of non-interference and non-intervention in the affairs of states. In an official statement, CARICOM countries said the political crisis in Venezuela has been worsened by recent events and can only be resolved through meaningful dialogue and diplomacy. CARICOM leaders are now seeking an urgent meeting with the United Nations to request the U.S. assistance in resolving the situation in Venezuela.
And the implementation of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, CSME.
Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez also sent his support to Maduro and said that U.S. behavior is violating international law. Rodriguez says those actions pose a threat to peace and stability in the entire region. Argentinian indigenous activist Milagros Sala has also expressed solidarity with Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro. The activist highlighted Maduro's leadership in the defense of Venezuela against interference.
President Nicolás Maduro, I send all my solidarity and help to you. I'm at your service, Commander, at any time you need me. Latin America is grateful for your leadership and all you have done for us. Venezuela is one of the few Latin American countries that is not in debt with the International Monetary Fund. I wish you victory, President. Yes to the homeland, no to colonialism.
A national strike has been called in Colombia after yet another social leader was murdered. Silvia Maritza Ramirez Chaverra was the president of the Community Action Board of the municipality of Aguas Claras. The circumstances surrounding her death are still unknown. Our correspondent Jose Manuel Jimenez tells us more.
With the murder of Laura Peña Cáceres and Maritza Ramirez Chaverra, 11 social leaders have been killed so far this year in Colombia. During the current term of the government of Iván Duque, 99 social leaders have been murdered. Since the signing of the peace agreement, the number has rose to 458 social leaders killed in the country. This Thursday, the UN Security Council released a press statement after the presentation of the quarterly report on the implementation of the peace agreement between Colombia and the FARC. It said the government should use all its resources to guarantee the path to peace that was agreed with the FARC. The report added that there are some other groups like the National Liberation Army and paramilitary groups influencing the internal conflict. The Security Council has also urged the Colombian state to protect social leaders in the different regions like Valle del Cauca, Tumaco, Putumayo, and Nariño, where campesinos, Afro-descendants, indigenous people, and trade union leaders have been hit by violence. The situation can get even more complicated as the country is holding regional elections this year, elections to choose governors and mayors. Experts say social leaders are an obstacle for the consolidation of power of certain political and economic powers.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Rescue workers in Brazil are working to pull people from the mud after a mining dam collapse in the southern state of Minas Gerais. The Civil Defense Agency in a nearby town is evacuating homes close to the river, but reported that the mud has not arrived there yet. Authorities said they had no confirmed reports of fatalities, but around 200 people are reported missing. The dam belonging to the Brazilian miner VZLA ruptured earlier on Friday. 6 days after the pipeline explosion in Mexico, the death toll has risen to 100. According to the Mexican Social Security Institute, 4 injured people died early Thursday. The institute said that there are another 11 people still hospitalized. The illegal gas pipeline tap exploded in the Mexican state of Hidalgo. Pope Francis continues with his agenda during his first visit to Panama City. Our correspondent Hugo Vera brings us the details.
Pope Francis is visiting the community of Pacora in the east of Panama City, where he will meet with young people from a youth detention center located near to the airport where the Pope arrived on Wednesday. After the meeting, he will hold a mass with them. At 5:30 in the afternoon local time, he will lead a Way of the Cross in the Santa Maria land that's located in the Panamanian coast near the Pacific in the city center of capital Panama City.
We thank Hugo for that report. During his first Mass in Panama, the Pope said he doesn't think the Catholic Church needs to be decorative or cool to attract new followers. His comments come as the Church continues to lose influence in the face of the advance of evangelical groups. On several occasions, Pope Francis has discussed the need to make changes in the Church while staying away from controversial issues like gay marriage, abortion, euthanasia, and allowing women to be priests.
We want to go forward, not to create a parallel church that's more fun or cool, in an event with young people with some decorative element, as if that leaves you happy. You don't think that, because to think that will mean to reason, because to think that will mean to disrespect you, and the spirit that lives within you.
Brazil's new president faces a political situation marked by corruption, complaints against his family, the dismantling of social protection, and the absence of measures to fight unemployment and poverty. Here's a closer look.
Even though Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro hasn't reached a month in office, concerns over alleged political corruption are emerging about his oldest son, Senator Flavio Bolsonaro. He's been linked to investigations into bank transfers and money laundering that also involve the First Lady and a former employee.
The specific case of his son and his family was restricted in formal and institutional terms in Rio de Janeiro, but it took on a national dimension because the son of the President of the Republic was involved. The son of the President asked for a favor from people inside the government to move the case to Brasilia, and when it came back that the investigations would be suspended, it nationalized the issue in political terms.
Bolsonaro has also been criticized because his agenda does not include plans to eradicate unemployment or actions to reduce the high percentage of poor, the school dropout rate, social inequality, or guarantee of proper housing and basic sanitation services.
The truth is that we are dealing with a government that is trying to implement measures to dismantle social protection structures with a liberal agenda in economic terms, but it has not demonstrated the ability to implement these measures. You do not see in the Congress a certainty that this government will be able to carry out its economic measures, whatever they may be. And above that, there is not total clarity.
Brazilian society fears the deepening of the short-term conflicts, especially within groups excluded from government action.
I think these will be difficult times mainly because it won't just be physical. It will be also on social networks. New torture methods will be implemented that are not only damaging to the body, but also to the mind.
During his electoral campaign, Bolsonaro promised that his government would be free of corruption. But investigations of unusual payments that tarnish his family's reputation may, according to analysts, change the minds of his supporters.
Caribbean carnivals have turned into powerful forms of activism. In Trinidad and Tobago, popular band The Lost Tribe has launched a social campaign around inclusivity and body positivity. The hashtag #MyCarnival campaign has created a social media platform for masqueraders of all races and ethnicities and gender identities to tell their unique carnival stories.
An expression of oneself.
Those 2 days, I am absolutely complete.
The Caribbean has been put in an alert for dengue fever. Countries across the region are launching public awareness campaigns to help prevent a major outbreak in the tourism-dependent islands. We have more in this report from our correspondent, Alison Kenish.
Health officials in St. Lucia are leaving nothing to chance after CARFA urged the Caribbean region to prepare for the possibility of a severe outbreak of dengue. Dengue is a flu-like illness with symptoms that include fever, joint pains, and headaches. It is spread by the Aedes aegypti mosquito, and the best defense against the virus is to destroy the mosquito's breeding sites. St. Lucia recorded a slight increase in dengue cases towards the end of 2018, but the country's national epidemiologist says this was in keeping with annual trends, as the virus is seasonal and often coincides with the rainy season. She says, however, that an out-of-season outbreak is possible.
With the changes, climate change, it would not be out of character to see cases or increases in cases at periods outside of this traditional timing. This is largely due to the fact that when it rains, water collects in any receptacle, which, however small, that persons may have in their yards. Simple things such as bottle covers. Water can collect in that and facilitating breeding of the mosquito.
The last major outbreak of dengue in the Caribbean was in 2009. CARFA has called on health ministries across the Caribbean to increase health promotion and ensure communities have access to information about eliminating mosquito breeding sites. And it seems as though citizens are taking the regional health agency's alerts seriously.
One ought to approach it as a mosquito problem. So we're talking about preparing for the onslaught of upturning receptacles that may hold water, not only around on the periphery of our boundaries or our space, but obviously if we clean our yard and our next door neighbor's yard is unclean and has receptacle which can hold water, then we have a problem. It is actually a nationwide problem.
Well, what we have to do is to keep our surroundings clean and then take care of ourselves, and then the mosquitoes will have to give us a break.
The Caribbean Public Health Agency has recommended a two-pronged approach to tackling the mosquito problem in the region. The first involves managing water storage containers, and the second is the proper disposal of used tires. Local health officials say they want communities to clean up. Alison Kentish, Telesur, St. Lucia.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a deal to reopen the government for 3 weeks. Congressional sources say the deal does not include funds for the wall at the U.S.-Mexico border wall. Trump said this agreement will only fund the government until February 15th. I will make
sure that all employees receive their back pay. I will sign a bill to open our government for 3 weeks until February 15th. I will make sure that all employees receive their back pay very quickly or as soon as possible. It'll happen fast. I am asking Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to put this proposal on the floor immediately.
And the ongoing government shutdown has caused more problems at airports. The Federal Aviation Authority Friday briefly halted flights to New York's LaGuardia Airport. There were also delays at other major airports across the country. Controllers and airport screeners were not being paid during the ongoing government shutdown that reached 35 days. In the Philippines, voters have decisively approved a new Muslim-led region in the country's south. It's hoped that the measure will bring peace after decades of fighting. This was the final step in a peace deal with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, which will now assume political power. The rebellion began in the 1970s and it's estimated to have claimed 150,000 lives. A young Palestinian has been killed by Israeli forces during clashes in the Gaza border. 25-year-old Ehab Abed was shot dead in his heart. Israeli forces have caused tear gas and live fire to thousands of protesters at multiple sites along the border. Another Palestinian was killed in a separate incident in the West Bank. In Greece, thousands of asylum seekers are getting ready to spend their fourth winter in a refugee camp. Here's a look at what they're facing.
Egisto is in relatively good conditions. The bungalows where the refugees live have air conditioning, heating, a kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. The camp location is accessible and all the refugees' needs are covered. But no one leaves his country to live in an industrial area next to a cemetery, away from everything, surrounded by military terrain.
My routine consists of cleaning the container I'm living in every day. I have nothing else to do.
For the whole day, there's nothing to do in the refugee camp, Mohammed tells us. He arrived when he was 16. His parents and 6 siblings live in exile in Iran, where life for Afghan people is especially tough. He has been here for 3 years, waiting for his asylum request to be resolved.
Here I don't have future. I don't have future. If I go another country like Germany, I maybe. Here not.
Many men at the refugee camps suffer from severe depression. The situation is even worse for women. They are not allowed to get depressed. They need to take care of their families and domestic chores.
There is not much to do here. Of course, I cook and clean, as I have been doing my whole life.
We meet with Sima, as she finishes cleaning her area. In a while, she will start cooking for her husband, her daughter, her brother-in-law, and her granddaughter.
I would have never imagined I was going to live this way. Our life in Afghanistan used to be good, but we have to leave because of the war.
Tomorrow, 7 new people will move into 2 empty containers. 5 come from Lesbos, with high hopes the move from the islands to the continent will be a good stop. But the other 2 have been deported from Germany after they requested asylum in Greece. The Greek asylum system resolves about 12,000 requests every year, but there are more than 50,000 requests pending. Many refugees are getting ready to spend their 4th winter at this camp. But if the administration's ineffectiveness continues, it will not be their last.
And still in Greece, lawmakers have ratified a controversial name change deal with neighboring Macedonia. Macedonia's parliament on January 11th backed a constitutional revision to change its name to the Republic of North Macedonia. But for the deal to go through, it had to be approved by Greek MPs. Since 1989, Athens had objected to its neighbor being called Macedonia because Greece has a northern province with the same name.
It's a historic day for the Balkans who have a long history of war, conflict, dispute, and national hatred. We are turning the page and giving room for peace, cooperation, friendship, solidarity, and understanding.
A scene from a South African soap opera has caused a social media firestorm in the country this week. Our correspondent in Pretoria, Matuba Malachi, has the story.
This scene unearthed the racial tensions that still exist in South Africa 25 years after the end of apartheid. Some viewers threatened to boycott the TV show because of the interracial love scene. Many social media users rallied behind the couple, rejecting the racist statements made against them. Even some influential people in South Africa's media industry took to social media.
Even if we can try and forget the apartheid era, that monster did a huge damage to our society, the damage that will live with us till the end. Well, unless maybe a miracle happens where the memories of segregation and apartheid is miraculously wiped out of our heads.
I find it pretty sad that that people have caused such an outrage over an interracial kiss on local television. It just shows you the norms and standards that were set in our lives. And people are so afraid to go outside of their bubble and what they were raised to believe.
I think South Africa will always have to deal with race issues until we as a country find a way to engage in dialogue, no matter how difficult or how uncomfortable it is. I don't believe we've discussed the most important things. I think we are still very afraid to offend each other. I think the idea of a rainbow nation has superseded the need for honest dialogue and conversation.
South Africa's population is only about 2% white, but there are still public spaces dominated by them, some even designed to exclude black people.
And so old understandings of race as biology, the material that was delegitimated in the rest of the world in 1948, which then became law in 1948 in South Africa, that has not been undone. Also, societies that are fascist usually have a process afterwards of taking away the fascism. So we've seen this in Germany with the denazification program. We've seen some of it in places like Spain, where the fascist regime that ruled under Franco, a lot of that was actively undone by post-1982 governments. In South Africa, that hasn't fully happened.
25 years of democracy is evidently not enough for South Africa to achieve social cohesion. The ongoing racial tensions undermine Nelson Mandela's project for reconciliation. Matua Mahlachi, Telesur, Pretoria.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.